ready for some football. I don't know about you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
Who else could it be? For me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to Thursday Night Football overtime. Broncos, Saints. Had a feeling that this game was going to get out of control. When I saw how the Saints came out early on, and I'll explain a little bit later when we get to the Saints side of things. This was a pure 100% BTA special. The kind where parents get the phone call while you're at school. You know what's coming. You're on the bus. You're staring out the window, and you know, man, it's not going to be good when I get home. And you want that to be the longest bus ride. You hope the bus breaks down, and somehow you don't make it home right away. And as the bus gets to the bus stop and you're getting off, and you know that when you cross the threshold of that door, it's belt to ass. That's what this game was for the New Orleans Saints. Straight, pure, unadulterated, belt to ass whooping in this game, 33-10. And honestly, the 10 points doesn't do it justice. This easily could have been a shutout. And the Broncos, for that matter, easily could have scored 40, maybe 50 if Bo Nix wasn't inaccurate as hell at the very beginning of this game. And so one of the things I've talked about with Bo Nix has been his struggles with accuracy at times this season. This was the worst that I've seen probably since week 2, where he was really inaccurate, wildly inaccurate in the week 2 game, threw it a bunch. He had been better lately, you know, and there have been games, even last week against the Chargers. I talked about the struggles in that game early on when the Chargers built that 23-0 lead, how he was a little bit inaccurate early and he didn't turn it up until literally the fourth quarter of that ball game. But it was pretty bad tonight. It was pretty rough. And I think you can see a direct correlation with him and his footwork and how the ball comes out. And I think one of the things that is also abundantly clear is he doesn't have a big arm, too. That's another thing that I think is abundantly clear. If his feet aren't set, he gets nothing on the football. And that was one of the things we talked about when we were going through the draft process, is he doesn't have a big-time arm. And so, you know, he has to be stationary when he's throwing the football in order to get the kind of accuracy and zip on the football that you want to see. And so when you get him moving either to his left or his right on the move, specifically to his left, it's not a great ball, right? To his right, he's solid. You can throw the ball on the move. But again, he's got his momentum has to be moving towards the target. He can't be fading backwards. He just doesn't have the arm strength for that. And we saw that tonight. There were several, opportunities. Guys are wide open, right? This is a game early on that's 0-0. First possession of the game. I mean, how many open targets? The first real big miss where you go, whoa, what? Whoa. Bro, what the F was that? Is the corner route, it looked like, to maybe the tight end. I don't know if he was running a corner or a bench route, or it was a deep over. But he's wide ass open. I'm gonna guess it was like a bench route or something. He's wide ass open. There is another receiver behind him, even more wide open. If he hits either one of those guys, pick one, it's a touchdown. Just hit one of them. And somehow, remarkably, he throws it in between both of them, over the head of the tight end, in front of the guy behind him, which was the other rookie from Oregon, Troy Franklin, at receiver, who's standing there like, was that for me? And the tight end's jumping as high as it can, and it goes over his hands. And I'm like, huh. Interesting. Didn't see that one coming. Then, there's another one in the red zone, and he's kind of moving, and he's got all day to throw, and no one's open. And at the last minute, he tries to run. He realizes he's not going to make it. Starts to try, fade backwards. And he's got a wide open tight end who will get the first down. And he skips it to him, and you're like, huh, interesting. Then there's another throw. Tight end, wide open again. And he's got to move, and his feet aren't set, and he's drifting backwards, and it's a shallow cross, and it's a third down. And you're like, just hit him, bro. It's a first down. And he skips it, and you go, huh, interesting. So clearly, if I'm playing the Denver Broncos, the goal is to get Bo Nix off the spot. Now you got to tackle him. And I've talked about this too when I've talked about it, because we've done our rookie showcase all season long, where we go through the rookie quarterbacks, their starts, and we talk about how they looked, and what I saw from them, and their development and their growth. And obviously their success, their development, their growth is tied to the success of their individual teams. And so it's a fun process to go through when you got this many rookie quarterbacks starting at once. It's always fun. I always enjoy this exercise. Something I've done since 2012 when I first started, when I called it the starting five back in 2012, when it was Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin III, Ryan Tannehill, Russell Wilson, and Brandon Weeden. Those five guys were drafted in 2012. They all started in their rookie season, pretty much from the jump. And I followed their rookie season. And now we got five rookies starting again. It was three initially. Now it's five. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys play. And both of the rookies that there were two of the five, starting tonight. And I told you I didn't really have any interest in this game prior to the two rookies starting. Now that you had Spencer Rattler starting opposite of Nix, it gave me a reason to watch even more so. And it was rough on both sides, to be honest with you. The run game is what really settled Denver down. That and Bo Nix's legs, to be honest with you, is what kind of settled them down, settled them in this ball game. And they knew defensively, and this is why I felt like Denver was going to win. I didn't think they would win this decisively until I saw their game plan early on. Okay, you're trying to get blown out tonight. And so I thought that because Bo Nix had the capability to miss some open receivers and not convert, and they could get into the red zone. This was a similar look against Tampa Bay, right? They won that game 23-7. They went up and down the field. They couldn't get in the end zone because they couldn't finish drives, and they had to settle for a bunch of field goals. And that's what they were doing early in this game. And one of the reasons they don't get in the end zone, they don't finish off drives, is because Bo Nix isn't hitting open receivers. And once his feet aren't settled and he has to move, and a lot of times you get in the red zone, it's not as easy to just stand in the pocket. It's a condensed field. It's not as many open windows. Either you got to make a tight window throw, or you got to extend the play to try to open up a window to get the football to one of your receivers. It's just tough for Bo Nix to execute. And the Broncos haven't run the ball all that great this season. This was their best rushing performance of the season, which, again, I think it coincides with their highest scoring output of the season. And then you factor in the struggles of Spencer Rattler and all the turnovers. That helps a lot as well. But ultimately, we knew this was going to be the Sean Payton game. He was going to be a big topic of discussion. And like I told you guys from the jump, nobody really gave a shit unless you were a Saints fan. This really didn't concern you. I could care less about Sean Payton going back to New Orleans. I'm not a Saints fan. Doesn't matter to me. But I knew this was going to be a big deal. That's why they put this on Thursday night. And I said this, I think, about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. The last time we didn't have a family business matchup on Thursday, I said, it's not a good idea to put two teams on Thursday Night Football that aren't in the same division. I just think Thursday is not a great product as is already. which is why you get a lot of bad matchups and a lot of bad games that aren't super competitive. You get a lot of players that aren't able to play because the week before, something happened. They need the, normal amount of time to recover. It's a short week. They're not able to make it. And so you get a watered down version of the team sometimes. But I think it gives you a chance to have a better product when you have two teams that already know each other. You're playing in the division. I know them. I know their tendencies, what they like to do. So it makes for a more competitive game when you put two teams against each other that don't know each other, that don't play each other all the time. There are things that you don't know, that you don't see, that is tough for you to kind of game plan for in such a short amount of time. The NFL, they're such sticklers for, hey, let's just focus on this game. It's hard to prepare for two opponents at once. So you put so much into the work week preparing for one opponent, and then immediately either you win and you can't even celebrate the win, or you lose and you can't lament the loss. You got to get right back after it and prepare for the next opponent. It's tough. So it makes it a lot easier if the two teams know one another, and it makes it a lot better of a game for us as fans to view. So I've been a big advocate for, hey, if you're going to put two teams against each other on Thursday Night Football, they should be in the division. We've gotten some close games, even if they weren't great games, aesthetically, like Dallas and the Giants wasn't a great game aesthetically, but it was 20-15 and it went down to the very bitter end. At least it was close. It was maybe a snoozer. If you were looking for entertainment value, it wasn't great, but at least it was a competitive game. Last week, Seattle and San Francisco, again, that was a competitive game up until the very end when the San Francisco 49ers kind of ran away at the very end with the late touchdown, but that was a competitive ball game. The Jets and the Patriots, not so much, but that's because the Patriots aren't very good, right? But at least it was a division game that had a chance to be close because the two teams know one another, et cetera, et cetera. This game got out of hand very quickly, and you can see early on that this Denver Broncos defense that is legit. They are the truth. I've talked about them throughout the course of this season. They started 0-2 and then rattled off 3 straight wins, really off the strength of their defense, especially the 10-9 victory at the Jets in a monsoon, essentially. That was all their defense. That game was all about their defense stepping up to the plate. They go to Tampa, surprise everybody. That's when they were 0-2, got their first win of the season. Nobody saw that coming. And they didn't just go to Tampa and win. They destroyed Tampa. And if not for Bo Nix's inability to put it in the end zone, they probably scored 30-plus points and win that game, by 4 or 5 scores. But instead, they won 23-7. And but it was dominant if you watched it. And this is what their defense is capable of. And so you get a quarterback that's young, making his second career NFL start, and you had to know that this Broncos defense was licking its chops, knowing that it was going to be able to sink its teeth into a young quarterback that had no idea what was coming. And he had really no time to prepare, right? Spencer Rattler got in last week, got the opportunity to start. You spend all that time preparing for Tampa Bay, and then just like that, you got to turn around and prepare for Denver. He had no chance. He had no chance. That's what you got. He was up against a Broncos defense that was just too strong. And we saw it very early on. He should have thrown a pick on the first possession. If Cody Barton could catch. Speaking of Cody Barton, hey, go have yourself a night, Cody Barton. And if you're a Commanders fan, you're saying, where was that Cody Barton all of last year, right? Where was that guy? We never saw this guy, this Cody Barton that the Seahawks maybe saw a little bit of. But this guy was everywhere tonight. And he was probably just improperly used, like most players that have been in Washington on defense with, under Jack Del Rio and et cetera, et cetera. He was misused, right? But he was fantastic tonight. He had a forced fumble on a beautifully disguised blitz where he came scot-free off the left edge. He had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. He almost had an interception. Again, if he could catch, he would have had an interception. He had a bunch of tackles, couple for loss. The guy was everywhere. And this was a dominant performance. If you're a Broncos fan, you got to ask yourself, how sustainable is this model this season? Because Bo Nix is going to get better. I truly believe that he'll settle in. He'll get better as time continues to progress. I love his mobility. And I told you, one of the things that I have been probably the most surprised by, and I don't know why, because I knew he could move, but because he didn't have to at Oregon, I forgot that Bo Nix in Auburn was a running, scrambling son of a bitch. This one at Oregon didn't have to move. He just stood back there. He was throwing into wide open windows. The ball was coming out extremely quick. That's how he had, 77% completion percentage his final year at Oregon. He didn't make mistakes because, again, guys were wide open. There wasn't any really good defenses in the Pac-12, so threw a bunch of touchdowns, like 2 or 3 interceptions, and completed almost 80% of his passes. So he didn't have to run very much. So I kind of forgot that he could. Then you get to the NFL, it's not as easy. You make some mistakes in the first 2 weeks where you turn over a bit, and they're like, hey, bro, just don't turn it over, and we'll have a shot because we play really good defense. And so now, if he doesn't like what he sees, he just takes off. He's not going to make the back-breaking mistake, as you can see. Tonight, he had what we call a brisket special, right? What is it? 16 of 26 for 164 yards. He had a brisket special, right? Those are classic Jacoby Brisket numbers. 10 incompletions, 164 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Hey, just don't screw it up. And he didn't. And in a game like this, where you're playing against a team that's struggling, a quarterback that's making his second career NFL start, that is going to make mistakes, that is going to turn it over, just don't turn it over. He didn't turn it over, but it wasn't a clean performance. How sustainable is this model if you're Denver? And the answer is not very sustainable if you're planning on making the postseason. Because here's the problem. Just like last week, you're going to run into a team that's better than you, who's better than you at your own game, right? Play defense, don't turn it over, make timely throws, run the football, kick field goals if you have to, score a touchdown here and there. And the Broncos beat them, or the Chargers beat them. And honestly, the score doesn't do it justice. They were up 23-0 midway through the fourth quarter, right? Like, they got dominated in that game. And anytime they see somebody that's really good, that's take care of the football, you're not going to be able to win doing this, right? So at some point, Bo Nix is going to have to be more accurate with the football. They're going to have to figure some things out offensively. And maybe tonight is the beginning of them establishing a consistent run game. They were outstanding on the ground. As a matter of fact, I'm actually interested to see how much they ran for on the ground, because it felt like it didn't even matter who was back there getting the rock in the run game. It just felt like everybody was getting theirs on the ground. Javonte had 88 yards on 14 carries, which is one of his best games of the season. Bo Nix had 10 carries for 75 yards. That's his best rushing performance of his career to this point. Jaleel McLaughlin only had 4 carries, but he had 35 yards on those 4 carries. That's almost 9 a pop. Audric Estime only had 5 carries, but he had 29 yards. It's almost 6 yards a pop. So when you put all that together, it's 35 carries for 225 yards. They destroyed the Saints on the ground. And that's what the night was, right? Like, they really figured it out on the ground. And if they can do that moving forward, it will take a ton of pressure off of Bo Nix. And all of a sudden, you may have something here, right? I don't think you're going to be able to run for 225 yards every week if you're the Denver Broncos. You're going to have to rely on Bo Nix to make some of the throws that he didn't make tonight. And that's been the issue, is he hasn't made those throws consistently. And so I don't know how sustainable this model is, but it got the job done tonight in epic fashion, 33-10. And so they get back over 500 at 4-3 on the season. Meanwhile, the Saints. And it was a good return, a great return for Sean Payton back to the place he used to call home, where he won the vast majority of his games and hoisted his only Lombardi. The Saints, boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. Where do I begin? So I thought this game was going to be competitive going in, right? I thought this would be a competitive game, but the Broncos defense would hold serve and they would pull away late with a touchdown and win this thing. I think I had them winning this game like 26-16, right? I think that was the score I had. So I had them winning by 2 scores. Did I have the Broncos? But I thought it would be a close game. It'd be 19-16 in the fourth quarter. Broncos score touchdown late, pull away, win 26-16. I thought that could happen because I thought defensively they would be able to force an interception, or two, or a turnover or two from Bo Nix. And Tyrann Mathieu dropped an easy interception, right? And not only did he drop an easy interception, I didn't see a Bronco within a mile of him if he catches it. So it went from, Broncos get a late first half field goal going into the break and make it 16-3. That easily could have been returned deep into Broncos territory, whether you run it back for a touchdown or not. And instead of them getting a field goal to end the half, you get a field goal to end the half. And now it's a totally different ball game. Instead of you being down 16-3 at halftime, you're down 13-6, or you score a touchdown, some crazy shit happens, and now it's 13-10 in the first half that you were absolutely dominated in. You're down 3 points, or you're down 7, and whatever it is, it's a one-score game instead of it being a two-score game at the half at 16-3. So the opportunity was there. They didn't seize it, but I thought that they were going to be able to do enough defensively to hang in because Bo Nix is no world beater, right? It's 2 rookie quarterbacks. So I expected there to be mistakes on both sides. And there was a chance for that to happen. But here's what I did expect offensively that I didn't see. And that's when I knew, oh shit, this is going to get ugly fast. The only guy playing in this game, it felt like 2/3 of the Saints roster was injured. They got some horrible news today with Rashid Shaheed out for the season, meniscus injury, got to have surgery. They were hoping they could shave it, right? And if they only had to shave it, he would be on the short-term IR, miss 4 weeks, probably come back. But if they had to redo repair the entire meniscus, he's done for the season. And they had to repair the entire meniscus, he's done for the season. So that's a devastating blow because, like I said, he's not only a devastating deep threat, probably the best in the NFL. There are a couple other guys, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, that are outstanding, but this dude is next level. He's also a tremendous punt returner. I don't know if there's anybody else in the league that has 2 punt returns for touchdowns. I think he has 2 punt returns for touchdowns this year. The only other guy that's even, him and the punt returner, Kevontae Turpin in Dallas, are the 2 best return men in football. And so you just lost that. So that hurts. There was no Olave. He's still dealing with a concussion. So you knew they were down, 2 of their best receivers. And obviously you don't have Derek Carr. You got your offensive line is banged up. There's all these, prohibitive factors that are going to slow you down offensively. Who's the one guy you have that can change a game by himself? And Denver probably was going to key in on tonight, but you still got to feed him anyway. I know you guys know it's Alvin Kamara, right? And so I didn't hear Alvin Kamara's name the entire first quarter. I actually forgot Alvin Kamara was playing tonight until we get like a third of the way through the second quarter. And they finally gave him a carry. And I'm like, oh shit, Alvin Kamara's playing tonight. That's right. I had forgotten. There's no way that I should have been able to forget Alvin Kamara was on your team tonight. It should have been so many touches for 41 that I'm like, damn, are they going to let the other backs play? Are they going to let the other guys get a chance tonight? That's how much he should have been featured tonight. And instead, Alvin Kamara had 13 total touches, 6 on the ground, 7 through the air, or one or the other, or reverse, 7 through the on the ground, 6 through the air, whatever. It wasn't enough. It wasn't a damn enough with a rookie quarterback and no weapons to get them to, no weapons for him to get the football to. It wasn't enough. And when I saw how they were going out about their business, the first play of the game, they go bootleg, and it worked. Wide open to the tight end. Hey, how about that? That they got infatuated with him throwing the football as if Spencer Rattler is like that. And I was like, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Where's 41? Huh? What are we doing here? What kind of amateur hour is this? Where's the manager? Let me speak to the manager. What are we doing right now? This was a poorly called football game. And you got a rookie quarterback, and you should be doing everything in your power to take pressure off of him. I think they threw the football on the first 8 or 9 plays of this game. No runs. And that's a recipe for the disaster for a guy making his second start. And I saw that this is going to be problematic. This is going to get out of hand because they got their priorities all out of whack. And of course, that's what happened, right? You throw Spencer Rattler essentially to the Wolves. That's a damn good Denver Broncos defense. Vance Joseph has those boys hunting, right? Hunting. And you can't throw your young second start rookie quarterback to the Wolves that way with no run game. How many rushing attempts did they have in this game? Minus the quarterback runs. How many rushing attempts did New Orleans have? Saints ran the ball 21 times. Bo Nix threw it 35 times. And this wasn't a blowout, where he had to take to the air and abandon the run. This is a 16-3 game at halftime. Okay. 6 runs for Kendre Miller, 3 runs for Jamal Williams, 7 runs for Alvin Kamara. A total of 16 runs between the 3 running backs. 16 runs. That's not going to cut it. And, if you're throwing the ball to Cedric Wilson Jr. and Mason Tipton and Bub Means, who the hell are you beating with that group of receivers? I got the answer. Nobody. Which is why you had to feature Alvin Kamara, and they didn't do it well enough in this game. And so that's a coaching issue right there. You got to start there. And so the 2 fumbles were huge, obviously. Set them up in field position on the first one. The second one was returned for a touch. The game was already over by then anyway, but still. That was an exclamation point is what that was. Spencer Rattler was solid, didn't technically throw an interception, even though he could have. He had the 2 fumbles, but he's got talent. I think we can all see that. If you watch the game tonight, you can see he's got some talent. He's not void of talent, but you're going to have to set him up. Just like any other rookie, you've got to put him in a position to succeed. I didn't feel like the Saints did that tonight. It felt like they kind of threw him out there and said, hey, you're an athlete, right? Figure it out, And that's no way to live. And your end result is a 33-10 ass kicking. And honestly, again, the score doesn't really do this game any justice. This felt like it should have been 43-0. That's how it felt it should have been. But Jake Haener came in late, mop-up duty, and scored a garbage time touchdown that was only good for the degenerates at home who put money on the over-under for this game, right? that was the only people that stuck around at the end of this game and had real interest in the outcome. But I'm going to take a different approach tonight because the Saints have now dropped 5 in a row. They started off, and I do this every time. I did this on the podcast. I did it last week when they lost to the Chiefs on Monday Night Football. I did it the week before when they lost to the Atlanta Falcons in a nail biter with Young Wei Koo. And, and I've done it every week since they started 2-0, scored 91 points, and we're lighting up the scoreboard. And everybody was like, oh, look at the Saints. And boy, life comes at you fast. Fast forward, 5 weeks later, and Jesus, they look like one of the worst teams in football. And yes, injuries have ravaged this roster, but this kind of felt inevitable too. So that leads me to something I wanted to discuss, and I've been saving this. I had this ace in my back pocket for quite some time, and I knew at some point I would have to play this ace. Tonight was the night, like Betty Wright. So I'm going to pull that ace out of my pocket tonight, and we're going to discuss. So let's go inside the odds, brought to you by BetUS.
Inside the odds.
Looking for a new football book this season, or just a new book in general. You got playoff baseball, basketball's about to get underway, hockey's already going. Man, you're looking for a new sports book. BetUS is the answer. Fastest payouts in the industry. Get up to 10% back on your net losses twice a year. And here's the big kicker. For new users, you get a 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000 and 125% sign-up bonus on the next 2 deposits up to $1,000 when you use the promo code YouTube150. So this is what I've been sitting on for quite some time. As you can see, the date, Thursday, September 26th. I said one day there's going to be an ass whooping on national television on one of these primetime games, and no one's really going to give a shit about the game. And guess what? I want to talk about who's going to get fired. And the team that gets their ass kicked is probably going to be one of those teams that you start looking at their coach and you say, I wonder if this guy's going to make it through the season. The first guy in September was, you look at, and so let's look at this list. Let's see in September, who BetUS thought was going to be most likely to be fired. Okay. So keep in mind, you look at the money line and they're all pluses here. No one's minus. So no one was like the overwhelming favorite. However, Doug Peterson is at plus 125. So essentially what BetUS was telling you is that, hey, we think Doug Peterson going to be the first one to get canned this season. And that wasn't a bad choice, especially after the start, September 26th, you're probably 3 weeks into the season at that point. So that wasn't a bad choice then, right? You look at some of the other guys that they thought could get canned early. Mike McCarthy in Dallas was plus 400. He's the second highest odds here to get canned back in September. Brian Daboll was plus 800. He had the third highest odds, the third best odds to get fired in New York, plus 900. Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. Obviously, you start 0-3 as Zach Taylor did. It's easy to pick off teams that didn't win games early in the season. So those were the favorites. As you can see, Robert Saleh was plus 2,500. So nobody saw him really get, BetUS didn't see him getting fired, right? Obviously, he was the first guy to get canned. Matt Eberflus of Chicago, they got off to a little bit of a rough start, plus 1,000. Same could be said for Antonio Pierce in Vegas. I find it hard to believe that a guy that just got hired last offseason is going to be fired in his first year, 6, 7, 8 games in or whatever. That's hard to believe, but we've seen guys get canned after a year, so anything's possible. Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, the 2-time coach of the year, won it last year, is plus 1,200. So again, he was top 7 or 8 in terms of odds to get canned. Obviously, again, the start to the season will do that to you. They got off to a rough start, and it's been pretty bad for Kevin Stefanski. So these are the numbers. I was when I had done this the first time, when I pulled this off of the BetUS site, I was appalled because I looked at Dan Quinn and I'm like, why is Dan Quinn at plus 2,500? He just got hired this past offseason. Like, this is a new regime. You really think they're gonna fire? And then I thought about, the I forgot her name, Mina Kimes, and the dodo take she had about how if this thing doesn't go well in Washington, Dan Quinn could get fired. And I'm like, oh, shut up. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. So when I see this plus 2,500, I was kind of like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. Different season, different owners, same shit, right? Obviously, he's not going anywhere. He's doing a tremendous job. But Dennis Allen, I wanted to focus in on DA. Plus 1,400 for DA, and he had gotten off to a really good start, and he was still plus 1,400, right? So he always just feels like a guy that's just kind of there. I never was a big DA fan. I wasn't a fan of his when he was in Oakland with the Raiders. And I'm like, yeah, DA's a cool defensive coordinator. He's really not head coach material. Like, how long is he going to last in New Orleans anyway? So this was in September, right? Now, we fast forward to present day, or not present day, October the 10th, which was a week ago? Yeah, I pulled these off the BetUS site a week ago to kind of see how things had changed since September when I pulled off the coaching odds the first time. And obviously, Nick, we had our first fire already. The Jets surprised everyone and fired Robert Saleh in a Ringling Brothers circus move. So now let's look at these odds. Now you see the list is shrunk. Guys like Dan Quinn aren't even on this list anymore because he's kicking ass. Anyway, next head coach to be fired during the season. These are the odds brought to you by BetUS. And obviously, Doug Peterson still leading the charge, right, at plus 150, rightfully so. If he loses to the Patriots, like, he's coaching for his job on Sunday. Over in London, if they lose to the Patriots, and I know Drake May's dealing with, some kind of ailment, may not play, but if it doesn't matter who plays, whether it's Jacoby Brisket and he puts up a brisket special and they find a way to win 16-10, or Drake May goes out there, throws 2 touchdown passes, runs for another, and they beat him 4-20, whatever the case may be. If they lose to the Patriots, he ain't making the trip back to London, from London. He's canned, right? Then we got Zach Taylor at plus 250. I still don't think Cincinnati would pull the trigger in season. I don't see it happening. I don't. But look, Joe Burrow is not hurt. This is the first time there's no excuse. There is absolutely no excuse. You don't win, and Burrow's perfectly fine. T. Higgins has been back now since week 3, and you're still losing. And you had Jamar Chase, and yes, he was disgruntled, and he wanted a contract, and he was pissed, and all of that good stuff, but he's been perfectly fine. Yeah, Zach Taylor definitely is in the crosshairs, right? Nick Sirianni, Kevin Stefanski are tied for third in terms of odds with plus 500. Sirianni didn't get off to a great start. He's getting into it with fans. They barely beat the Browns. These next 2 games are big. If they win both of them, he's fine. He's not getting fired, and they got a chance to have a really good season. If they win one, lose one, he's not out of the woods, but he's probably going to make it through the season. And if he gets fired, it'll be at season's end. If they lose both of these games, there's a chance he doesn't make it out of this season alive, because this thing could spiral on them very quickly, right? Kevin Stefanski, I just don't see the Browns moving on Kevin Stefanski. I just don't. There are a lot of reasons as to why they're not good this season. The biggest one is that quarterback. They've had a ton of injuries, and you could use that excuse for anybody, including this Saints team. But that's a part of it. They had injuries last year, and guess what they did? They made it to the playoffs. So we know what the real issue is here. All right. They lost Nick Chubb last year, and they still ran the football. They lost their quarterbacks, 15 of them, still went to the playoffs. We know what the issue is here. It's the quarterback. So I don't think they're going to fire Kevin Stefanski, but we'll see. But I wanted to look at Dennis Allen and him on this list. And after Antonio Pierce, who is plus 900. Then there's Dennis Allen at plus 1,200. So his odds have gone up, that he could be fired. It was plus 1,400 back in September. It's now plus 1,200. And after tonight's performance, I would guess the next time that BetUS posts these odds for the next head coach to be fired, I would imagine he's going to be under 1,000 and somewhere in that 900 to 800 range, if not lower than that, because that's 5 losses in a row for DA, and they look lost. And yes, they have injuries, but they're non-competitive. They were non-competitive tonight. And they gave up 50 points last week at home. These have been 2 pure ass whoopings at the crib. Now, I'm not saying that they've quit on him, but the thing that they are supposed to be known for, which is defense, because Dennis Allen is a defensive guy and he's calling the defensive plays, they're not good at. And that's the thing that I struggle with, which is one of the reasons why I didn't understand why you fired Robert Saleh. The players hadn't quit on him. And the one side of the ball that he's known for was good. I mean, it wasn't great, but it had been good the entire time of his whole tenure. And it wasn't the reason they were losing games this year. They didn't lose 10-9 because of their defense against the Broncos. They lost 10-9 because Nathaniel Hackett is a hack. And somehow Saleh gets fired, but not the guy that was responsible for the offense being anemic this season. Make it make sense. Dennis Allen's defense stinks right now. They can't stop a nosebleed. And he's calling defensive plays, and it's all out of whack. And you can blame the offense, or you can blame the injuries all you want. But they're just not good on defense. They're just not good. So they can't tackle anybody. They had tackling issues last week. That persisted tonight. And they gave up 225 yards rushing to a team that probably their season high rushing was probably like 120 yards in a game, that had struggled mightily to run the football this season. They gave up 225 yards to a team with a rookie quarterback. It's all bad in New Orleans right now. And I'd put him as the second highest odds right now. I don't think Stefanski or Sirianni are getting fired before Dennis Allen does. Again, I don't know how volatile Mickey Loomis is and the Saints organization is when it comes to firing head coaches, because they haven't done it in a long time, because Sean Payton was there for so long and they didn't have to worry about it. So I don't even know how they are going to go about this. But if there was anybody that probably could get canned in season, it feels like Dennis Allen is a candidate. It's 5 straight losses. And I don't know what their schedule looks like moving forward. I'm going to take a look, see. And Derek Carr's not going to save you when he comes back. That's the bad part. They were losing with Derek Carr in the lineup, right? Derek Carr just got hurt 2 weeks ago. They had already lost 3 in a row. Now, granted, the Atlanta loss, they were right there. It easily could have and probably should have won that game. And if not for Derek Carr throwing a pick 6 and Rashid Shaheed trying to field a punt inside his 5-yard line, having it bounce off of his shoulder pad and into the end zone, recover for a touchdown, they should have won that game. They didn't give up an offensive touchdown in that game. But still, I digress. So Derek Carr's not going to save you when he comes back, right? So let's check and see what the Saints look like moving forward here. They got the Chargers, the Panthers, the Falcons. They can win some games here. He should be able to make it through the season. Theoretically speaking, they should be able to beat the Panthers, right? But then I'm thinking the Panthers are going to win 4 or 5 games this season. They got to beat somebody too. So that game could go either way. They have the Browns in a month, right? In November. Hey, how about that? Nick Chubb will be back and be, theoretically speaking, if he's healthy by then and he's gotten the engine revved up. Oh, man, I don't know, man. It's could get ugly for Dennis Allen, but such is life. Let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say. Big shout out to BetUS. Video channel gets us kicked off tonight. If you're out there, you want your comment read on the air, super chats are the best way to have that happen. But if time permits, and we probably will have a few minutes at the tail end after we get through these supers, I will get to as many of the comments as humanly possible. If you use the hashtag LouieTLive, we'll get to your comment if time permits. If you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to do that. So, video channel, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB video channel. Right? No looking like Kliff and Cam Ward. NO. Okay. New Orleans looking like Kliff and Cam Ward 2025. I don't know if anyone's going to come calling for Kliff next year. I wouldn't be shocked. You know, it's a copycat league. If this continues with him and Jaden Daniels and they have this success roll into the postseason and they win a game or two, I could see Kliff, being at the top of somebody's wish list. Absolutely. With the new quarterback, especially, and Cam Ward having the skill set that he has, very similar to Jaden Daniels. They're not the same quarterback, though. I will warn you, they're not the same quarterback, but having a skill set that is similar, I could see someone being interested in having Kliff, break in a brand new quarterback. But I think Kliff is destined for college more so than the NFL. But you never know. I mean, Kliff might want another shot at being a head coach to show that he learned his lesson from the first time. He's doing a hell of a job. But I don't think he really wants the responsibility of being an NFL head coach. Maybe he does. Maybe having been in this environment in Washington, seeing how DQ runs his show and seeing the mistakes he made the first time and seeing how it looks when it's done correctly. Maybe he takes some things. I mean, because DQ talked about that. He learned a lot from his first stint and, going to Dallas and seeing how Mike McCarthy did things. And he took some bits and pieces from that and kind of learned some of the things that he didn't do well. So maybe Kliff is interested in being a head coach in the NFL again. I think he's more suited for the college game, though. So we'll see what becomes of Kliff. I'm just enjoying while we got him, because I really think that Kliff is going to be in Washington for 2 years. That's what I felt when we hired him, that he would be gone after 2 years. With the success that we're having, this is a part of success. And I want this. I encourage the success, because when you're successful, and I talk about this with the 49ers all the time, when you're successful, people are going to come knocking and they're going to want your stuff. And you have to prepare for the inevitable. If you're successful, people are going to want to poach your coaches. All right. I mean, Clint Kubiak came from San Francisco, the offensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints. And a lot of people think he's going to be a head coach at some point in his NFL career. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. Right. And we look at the job that's being done in Houston and Bobby Slowick. He came from San Francisco. What do you think is going to happen when we start having success? People are going to come for Brian Johnson. People are going to come for Kliff Kingsbury. People are going to come for the former quarterback of the Detroit Lions, the backup, the one that gave us the screen flea flicker. If you watch the press conference, Kliff Kingsbury said that flea flicker came from what is his damn name? The backup quarterback that was Blau, David Blau was where that came from. They did it at Purdue when Blau was at Purdue. So he got it from Jeff Fromm. So you got to be prepared. Tavita Pritchard, we got to have all these guys ready to take over. Because eventually, if you continue to play well, people are coming for your stuff. Eventually, someone's going to say, you know what? If Joe Witt Jr., if this defense is good in 3 years, somebody's going to come for Joe Witt Jr., right? And if they do, then you promote Darryl Tapp. And if the defense continues to play well, just like San Francisco, first it was Robert Saleh. Then it was DeMeco Ryans, because you got to have the next guy waiting and being ready. Our next guy is Darryl Tapp. He'll be the next defensive coordinator. If Joe Witt Jr. gets a job, the next guy in line will be Darryl Tapp. And guess what? If Tapp kills it, just like DeMeco did in San Francisco, he'll get an opportunity to be a head coach. So you got to have that next guy. Like, we got to start thinking in those terms. Because we got one of them ones. We're going to be good for a very long time. I don't know if Kliff is going to be gone in 2025, but remember I said this the other day. I think I said this on the podcast. When you go into a season, you don't really know who's going to be looking for a quarterback. You don't know who's going to be looking for a QB. But you can't win 7 games, 6 games, and expect to just get one to fall into your lap, because there are going to be some bad teams who ultimately you didn't have on your radar as a team that needed a quarterback. We had the Saints needing a quarterback before the season started. And they still got Derek Carr. But Derek Carr is Derek Carr. And at some point, you're going to want to replace him. You end up, if Derek Carr comes back and he stinks it up and you only win 4 games or 5 games this season, probably going to think about drafting a quarterback if you're high enough, right? Cleveland, trust me, if they end up 3-14, 4-13 this year, they're going to think about drafting a quarterback. Will they do it? I don't know, but they're going to think about it, because as soon as they can get out of Deshaun Watson's contract, they are gone. And if you already got a guy in the system under Stefanski learning, hell yeah, sign me up, right? It's tough to go away from Watson right now because you're going to Jameis Winston. I mean, what is that going to do, right? So, yeah, and the Raiders, same deal, right? Giants, it's a lot of these teams are going to need quarterbacks, but only 2 or 3 of them are probably going to end up with a quarterback that's any good. So, add the Saints potentially into that mix. People were questioning Atlanta, and I'll say this and we'll move on to the next super chat. People were questioning Atlanta for drafting a quarterback out of the blue, kind of catching everybody off guard when they drafted Michael Penix Jr. And I think they overcompensated, because I remember very vividly being an advocate for them drafting Justin Fields back in the 21 draft, and they took Kyle Pitts. And I said, you idiots, because they had Matt Ryan, and I'm like, Matt is on the downside. He only has 1 more year in Atlanta. Why not draft? You don't want to alienate Matt Ryan? F Matt Ryan. He'll come back when you decide to retire his jersey and put his name up in the Ring of Fame. He'll come back. He might be pissed off right now, but he'll be fine. Draft Justin Fields. Let him sit for a year behind Matt Ryan, and they wouldn't have had to go through all this bullshit that they just went through. But instead, they took Kyle Pitts. Bet they regretted that decision, even though Justin Fields hasn't turned it. But I tell you what, if Justin Fields would have been in Atlanta with Arthur Smith, not Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith, I bet you the results would have been better. I guarantee it. But that's nor here nor there, right? Because Mike Tomlin wants the offense run a certain way. Arthur Smith is more creative than the shit we're seeing in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin wants it done a certain way. So it is what it is. So they overcompensated. This time they said, you know what? We're in the same position we were when we took Kyle Pitts. We're not going to make the same mistake this time. Got a quarterback that we really like sitting right here in our lap. We're not going to pass him up. And so they took him. Surprised all of us. I think you're going to see teams maybe do that more often, where you say, you know what? I'm up here. I don't know. And I said that to Atlanta. I said, I don't know how many more times you're going to be this high, bro. You sucked last year. You earned the right to draft a quarterback. Don't pass this opportunity up. And they did. They didn't do it this time, though. And they knew we got Kirk Cousins. Kirk ain't going to let us stink. We're not going to be high enough to draft a quarterback. How long you think Kirk's 34 years old. How much longer you think he's going to play? Coming off of an Achilles. How long you think he's going to play? Yeah, we can go ahead and get ours. It's going to be a lot of teams scrambling next year, trying to position themselves to get a quarterback. And like I said, it's a hell of a game of musical chairs. I'm just glad I'm not in the shit no more. Because it's going to be nasty next year when you look up and it's 6 or 7 teams vying for probably 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Because this draft this year coming up, this quarterback class ain't going to be nowhere near as good as the one we just saw in 2024. I can assure you of that shit. This going to look a lot like that 2021 class, where you might get 5 first rounders, but only one of them is going to be with their team after 3-4 years. It's going to be that type of draft. Watch what I tell you. JLG, or excuse me, Life, No Life. Been a member for 18 months. Who writes, I miss John Gruden. I'm sure Derek Carr does too. You damn right he does. He was playing his best football under Gruden in Vegas, and he would still be in Vegas right now if Gruden was there, and Devontae Adams would probably be in Vegas too, because they would have still went and got him. And they would have been playing good enough to where shit could have been rolling in Vegas. It's a damn shame what happened to that dog. JLG, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, Lou, I couldn't agree more about Kamara. He should have been first, second, third, and fourth option tonight. I had him over 24 receiving yards. Did he even make it to 24 receiving yards? Is the question. I'm not even sure if he did or not. That's a great question. Let's see if he did. Alvin Kamara for the win. Oh, 14 yards receiving. Damn it, man. How is that possible with no Rashid Shaheed, with no Chris Olave? How is it possible that Alvin Kamara doesn't go over 24 receiving yards? Unfathomable. Unreal. Un-effing believable. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Harambe writes, Lou, my guy, what's good, my man? What's good with you, Harambe? I still am in shock about us having JD5, a new owner, good new coach, and Chef P. I can't believe this, bruh. Like, what the F? Yeah. And you know what's refreshing is watching Bo Nix tonight, and I've watched him all season, and watching Spencer Rattler. It just reminds you of how blessed we are. Even though I think most of us who have gone through the abyss at the quarterback position for as long as we have understand how blessed we are. It's always a constant reminder when you watch the other youngins struggle to make the simplest of passes, right? I mean, Bo Nix had two wide open receivers, both of which score a touchdown if he just gets it to them and they don't have to leave their feet. And somehow, and Derek B tweeted this out, and it was perfect. He said, Bo Nix had two wide open receivers and somehow managed to throw it in between both of them. And I responded to that, yes, period. Yes, yes, it is. He said, that is special. I said, yes, period. Yes, it is. Period. Then I put Deborah Laws, exclamation point, 100, right? He probably didn't know what that meant. But for those of you who are music heads like me, you know exactly what I meant when I said Deborah Laws, right? Anyway, it's just refreshing to know we don't have these issues. You know, when we talk about the rest of the division and Mike McCarthy, we just looked at that list, right? Mike McCarthy was top 6 on the September list. He's top 5 on the October list. Sirianni was second at plus 500, you know, on the October 10th list. Like, we don't have those issues. What a blessing it is, right? Brian Daboll was pretty high on the list, on the September list. I didn't even actually interested where he was. Plus 2,000, so they think he's pretty safe, as do I. I don't think Brian Daboll's going anywhere. I never thought he had a chance to get fired this year, but you never know, right? Anyway, I digress. Don't pinch yourself. I've done that. It hurts. All of this is real. Trust me. We're good. Feels good. Feels good. Feels good. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, would you be willing to go to a game now? It'd probably have to be a playoff game. If you're going to get me out of my house, it's going to probably have to be a playoff game. Because I just don't want to deal with the traffic. I live an hour and maybe 15 minutes away from the stadium, and it would literally probably take me 5-6 hours to get home if I go to a game. I've done it before. I said, I'm not doing that again. Not until you get a new stadium. Would I want to go to a game? But you get to some playoff games, and you might be able to get me out of my house, but probably not. You know, I probably will enjoy it more from the confines of my home, where I can go live after the game. And shit, if we get to the playoffs, I'm probably streaming live. We're gonna watch this shit together. Like, actually, you can see me. We're talking through this bitch as the game's happening. Like, we go to the playoffs, and this is next level shit. That might reserve that for like the NFC Championship game or something like that. But I'm a nervous wreck when I watch games. So, but if you guys are watching with me, it'll calm me down a little bit, and I'll probably be talking the whole damn way, because normally I don't say shit when I'm watching the game other than yelling and screaming. I don't be talking the whole time. But it's levels to this shit, man. I'm so prepared. I'm ready. You know, I am so ready for a playoff game. You know, that 2021 didn't do us any justice. We didn't even have fans at the game when we played Tampa Bay. I'm so ready for a playoff game. Oh my God. And I can feel it. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? It is here. It's coming. It's coming. Fat Boy V. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Fat Boy V writes, yo, Lou. What up, Fat Boy V? What up? An underrated player that may be on the trade block, might not be at a PON, but could a position of need, for those of you wondering, but could add to our weapons and create strength, is who is young and talented, that would consider is Etienne. I'm assuming Travis Etienne. Is that who you're talking about? I'm good on Travis Etienne. He's in the Jacksonville doghouse. You probably can get him if you want him. And he does have something that we don't necessarily have, and that's that speed and that ability to make some big plays, but he also fumbles the ball quite a bit. That's part of the reason why he's in the doghouse, and he's oft injured. He's actually injured right now. That's part of why we're seeing Tank Bigsby take a little bit more of the touches and the snaps. He's always injured. I don't think I'm really interested. Our running backs are just fine, and I know they're not interested either, because they like Jeremy McNichols. And if you go get a Travis Etienne, now you got to sit somebody down, and they love what those three backs provide them. So you're right. It's not a position of need. It's not something I would see them doing. If you were going to do that, you might as well go get Mike Williams from the Jets. They're having a yard sale with him in particular. They'll give him away. He has to go. That's all. So if you were really interested with a guy that is going to come off the books contractually next year, it was a 1-year deal in New York, just go get Mike Williams, right? Why not? If you're going to do that, do it somewhere where you can actually see it have an impact, not somewhere where it won't really affect us. He's not getting on the field over Brian Robinson Jr. and Austin Eckler. So I hear what you're saying, though. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, Lou, what changed in the NFL to where we really don't have a completely dominant team? I.e. the early 2000s Patriots, those teams were dominant. Not really any terrible teams either. Maybe one or two teams pretty average. So you're not wrong. I've talked about this for the last maybe 3 years, because the last 2 years in particular, I felt like it's been we're getting closer to where anybody can win the Super Bowl. 2 years ago, the Eagles were dominant and the Chiefs were dominant. And so you knew those were the two best teams in football, and eventually they would lock horns, and they did. But last year in particular, I said anybody can win the Super Bowl. Anybody can win the Super Bowl. And that was the Chiefs were not the Chiefs last year for the first time. For the first time in the Mahomes era, he played a road playoff game. He had to play 2 last year. Not 1, 2. He had never played a road playoff game in his career, and he had to play 2 in the same postseason because they weren't the Chiefs. And he still managed to win the Super Bowl. Still managed to go to the Super Bowl and win. the Super Bowl. The 49ers had every opportunity to win that Super Bowl, and they blew it, right? So I feel like we're getting closer and closer to, hey, anybody can win this shit. But you say there's no dominant team. The Chiefs, what do you mean? They're trying to set history in the NFL as the first team to win 3 consecutive Super Bowls, and they're 5-0. Granted, we all know that the 5-0 hasn't been super impressive, but it's the Chiefs. I've said this, and this is where I think you're spot on. I've said over the last maybe 5 years or so, the middle class in the NFL has expanded, right? It used to be the haves, the have-nots, and then the middle class was like 8 to 9 teams. There were, 7 teams that were really good, 8 to 9 teams, maybe 12 teams or so that were middle class, right? Okay, close to making the playoffs, not terrible, but not great either. And then there were 10 or 11 lousy teams in the league. Like, hey, if you're going to be one of the good teams in the league, you got to beat the hell out of these teams, right? If you're the middle class, you got to find a way to beat these teams. That's how you stay in the middle class, right? And now there are only 4 or 5, a handful of teams that are the elites, the upper echelon in the NFL. There are only 4 or 5 teams that absolutely suck, right? And then the other 20 to 22 teams are in the middle class, right? So I think what you're seeing is, one, there are less like elite quarterbacks. Like we went through an era where Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, and I'm not calling Eli elite, but you get him in the playoffs and you know what could happen. But like, he was a good quarterback though. And he's gonna end up being a Hall of Famer, which I don't agree with, but we've gone that road before. But you had Eli and Peyton, you had Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, right? Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers. Like, I could keep going. I mean, that's 7 dudes right there, right? And I can keep going. In the league, it was in a really good spot with Russell Wilson and so many other quarterbacks. It was in a good spot where you weren't going to lose a bunch of games when those were your quarterbacks. Andrew Luck, like, we're now in a time in the NFL where there aren't a lot of teams with dynamic quarterbacks. Guys, like, we could probably count them on maybe one hand and a half of teams with quarterbacks that are like true difference makers. I call them one of them ones. We had a bunch of them back in the day. And I think this new era of quarterbacks that are being ushered in, the Caleb Williamses and the Jaden Daniels, they have a chance to be in that. Jaden is already there. I think Caleb has a chance to get there eventually. But I think as some of these new quarterbacks, what has happened is a lot of teams have whiffed in the draft at quarterback. That 2021 draft class is a prime example, right? The last really good draft of quarterbacks was 2020. Burrow, Herbert, Tua, Hurts, all in that 2020 class, right? 21 was an epic fail. 5 guys were in the first round. 4 of them are no longer with their team, and Trevor Lawrence is struggling mightily with Jacksonville after getting a new deal. Oh, and I forgot Jordan Love was in that 2020 class as well. Don't want to forget him. He's playing well right now too. So that class is kind of helping, right, keep the quarterback situation solid. But 21 was an epic fail. 22, there were no quarterbacks in that draft class. No one went in the first round that year, right? Or one did, Kenny Pickett, and he's ass, and he's no longer with the team that drafted him. 23 wasn't a good draft class, it doesn't feel like, other than CJ Stroud, right? So Will Levis stinks. Bryce Young doesn't appear to be any good right now. So, that's the biggest issue, is these new quarterbacks are coming in to me, and they're not getting the job done. And if you don't have a quarterback, we've talked about this a million times. You don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance, right? You're dead in the water. You don't have a QB. And so I don't give a damn how good your roster is. We've seen teams have dominant defenses like the Jets, like the Broncos of yesteryear, and they win 6 games because you don't have a quarterback. You can't win in this league. And that's where I see the biggest, issue is there are just not enough good quarterbacks. It's a lot of teams with poor quarterback play or mediocre quarterback play, which puts you in that middle class. And so I think the teams that obviously don't have a quarterback, they end up in the terrible quarterback, terrible conversation, and they're one of the have-nots. The haves are the teams with established, quarterbacks that are one of them ones. Buffalo and Baltimore and Kansas City, and normally Cincinnati. Obviously, they're not there right now, but those are the teams that usually are really good, right? Because they got one of them ones. And then a lot of teams have Derek Carrs and Dak Prescott's and Kirk Cousins and, those types of quarterbacks. It's hard to win consistently with that kind of quarterback if you don't have a team around that guy that can consistently get it done. Like in Detroit with Jared Goff. He's not elite, but the team around him is, and the coaching staff is. And so, voila, there you have it, right? John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, JP, writes, this was such a blah game. Only reason I watched was because of Bo Nix, and Chase Young doesn't look like the same 2020 Defensive Rookie of the Year we saw in Washington. He hasn't looked like that in a long time. You said that like you're surprised, JP. He didn't look like that in Washington when we traded him. He didn't look like that in San Francisco when they got him. And I told Niners fan when they got him, I said, hey, buyer beware. You can't get your money back. You can't get your pick back. Don't come to me asking for that shit in 3 weeks. And by the time he got to the playoffs, you're like, man, Chase Young sucks. And I'm like, yeah, I told you that already. And don't look at me for your 3rd round pick because you ain't getting that bitch back. And I would advise, I saw you tweet me that some random Twitter account says that Chase Young could be on the trading block. Who the hell's trading for him? Who's making that mistake again? Who's doing that? Let's trade it for Chase Young. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, defenses are worse too. Even the great defensive teams give up explosives every game. Just 20 years ago, many teams still had defensive identities, and the defenses stayed good for years, not one season. But what you also have to understand is they've changed the rules drastically to help and aid the offense, right? Those Patriot defenses that were dominant with Ty Law and Loyal Malloy and Willie McGinnis and Teddy Bruschi, they changed the rules. Those dudes were jacking fools up. Sort of like the 70s Steelers, clotheslining folks and manhandling receivers down the field with Rodney Harrison. Like, you can't do that shit anymore. They stopped it. That 04 Patriots team was the last team. They said enough of that shit. We can't have you roughhousing receivers and making playoff games 23-10 and shit like that. We can't have that. We got they instituted the 5-yard rule and all of that. They got really hyper aggressive with flags down the field, and then they had the defenseless receivers and all that shit that they've instituted over the years. You can't hit the quarterbacks now. Everything that they've done has to promote offensive growth and more points scored because that's more exciting. So that's why you don't see really dominant defenses anymore either. It's tough to play defense. It's tough. Swaggy P, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Swaggy P writes, seeing Chase Young's regression is a sad sight to see. I told you I lost any interest in Chase Young, the football player, when he was out due to his injury, when he was asked about his recovery and, all of this and people doubting him. Instead of him saying, people can say what they want to say. I know who I am as a football player. I'm attacking this recovery the same way I, attacked any other obstacle in my life, yada, yada. Instead of him saying some shit like that, when he hit me with the football don't define me, I said, oh, shit. This ain't going to work. And I told y'all in the moment when he said that and he got all defensive, I said, that's not a good sign. Football don't define me. And it seems like football don't define him because I see the effort. It's bullshit. And I'm like, he could never have played for Dan Quinn and Joe Whitney. He could never. Like that kind of effort, he would have been on the bench. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, how do you feel about Chef P not being aggressive in the trade market? Me? I ain't mad at it. I trust the man. I whatever he does, he's got 110% support from me. 1000% support from me. If he does nothing, I know why he didn't do nothing. I've been saying I don't anticipate us doing anything. If he does do something, I know what it's going to be. It's going to be a day 3 move, right? A day 3 pick that he'll give up. He's not mortgaging our future to chase something in the present when he understands that the likelihood, and we can't say what's going to happen, right? But it's hard to chase a Super Bowl in a year in which we were an afterthought, and this roster is clearly not ready to do that. You know, so next year he's going to be aggressive in free agency because he sees what he's got at quarterback. He's going to be aggressive in free agency. He's going to be aggressive in the draft, and I expect us to be in a position to be competing for a Super Bowl next year. But I 110% support whatever decision he makes. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, Condo P, be my peace in the mob during the games. LOL. She tries. It's a lot of craziness. You were a part of the craziness this past week against the Ravens. You might have been the craziness because there was no our biggest troll in the mob wasn't in attendance. I don't know where he was, but he wasn't there. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name right now, but he wasn't there. Trevor Patch is our biggest troll, and he wasn't in attendance. So the crazy, outlandish trolling negativity wasn't there, but you filled that void beautifully. You filled that void beautifully on Sunday. The mob is crazy. It's a crazy place to be. It's full of a lot of emotion on Sundays. Usually there are probably like 4 or 5 of us, Condo P being one of them, myself being one, that are calm on Sundays. Everybody else is losing their shit, in there. And we're gonna lose. This guy sucks, and this, that, and the third. I just get a kick out of it, but that's part of being a fan, man. That's part of being a fan. Condo P is a lot of people's saving grace on Sundays. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Payne been quiet. What do you think happens to him? Nothing. Look, at the end of the day, it's still a long season ago. Anything could happen. He could turn it up the second half of the season. He could start to be a menace as he gets more and more comfortable. Maybe with Jonathan Allen out now, he knows I got to step up. Maybe he turns into an alpha again. I don't know. Like he hasn't been trash. I just thought he would be more disruptive as a pass rusher, and he hasn't been. Stopping the run, he's been solid. He's been solid. But I thought he would be more of a force and more of a factor as a pass rusher, and he hasn't. And I wish I could tell you why he hasn't been, but I don't have any answers for you. I don't. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, listen, bro, I ain't have my Snicker bar on Sunday. See, I don't know what to believe anymore because you tried to make me feel like I was crazy, like you were trolling and you weren't serious. But you were serious. You were in your feelings on Sunday, and you tried to cover your tracks and make it seem like, man, I was just kidding. You were tripping. You thought I was serious. You was dead ass. You was going through it. All right, you was going through it on Sunday. So now you didn't have your Snickers bar. You were hungry. And you're not yourself when you're hungry. Okay. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see. Kevin the PRF. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Kevin the PRF, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, writes, remember back when we got Dishman from the Oilers? Was completely dominant for 1 year. Then they changed the PI rule after 1 year, and he was useless. It it's amazing how some guys live and die with certain rules because their style of play fits a certain way. And when you take that ability away from a guy, it changes who they are. And Chris Dishman is a guy that played in an era of football where you could be handsy and physical with receivers. And if I've been doing that, and when we got Chris Dishman, he was probably in year 9, 10 of his career, man. He played a long time with the Houston Oilers before we got our hands on him. You know, because you got to remember, there was no free agency until 1993. So you couldn't leave teams, you couldn't change teams unless your contract was up, right? And even then it was tough. So he had played football one way. Like a lot of guys, he wasn't alone. He played football one way for a lot of years. And now you're telling me I can't do this? So it was a big change for a lot of guys, not just him. Harambe 2024, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, man, that heartbreak ain't no joke, Lou. But that game wasn't heartbreaking. Not to me, at least. I can't speak for you. Clearly, you were very much so affected by the outcome of that Ravens game. I mean, they're a good team. They're a good team. The response that you had would have been justifiable to the Bears game from last year on a Thursday night when we lost to a winless Bears team that hadn't won in 16 games. And not only did we lose, we got run. That your response in the group chat or the mob chat would have been justifiable and reasonable to that game, not to the Ravens game. We were 4-2. And the Ravens are a damn good football team. They're a Super Bowl contending team with the reigning league MVP and King Henry as their running back. Like, we knew it was going to be tough. But clearly you took it hard. Harder than most. Anyway, I digress. Harambe, 2024, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, we start losing to an NFC East rival. Oh, boy. Look, man, I hope you don't think we're going to go undefeated in the division. I would love nothing more than to do that. But the reality of the situation is we're not. You know, we're going to lose more games this season. More than likely, we're going to lose to teams in the division. Hopefully not the Giants. I'd like to sweep Dallas if they keep up the shit that they're doing. But Philadelphia isn't going to go quietly. Like, I think the Eagles are going to be these next 2 games are going to be huge for the Eagles. If they take care of business, they have a chance to be a thorn in our side this year. If they lose these next 2 games, even if they just lose one of them, if they beat the Giants, they should be fine. And then lose to Cincinnati, they'll be fine. But if they lose to the Giants, that Cincinnati game is the weight of the world is gonna be on Nick Sirianni's shoulders. It'll feel like the walls are caving in and they got to win on the road at Cincinnati. And it'll feel a lot like that Saints game, essentially. It'll feel a lot like that Saints game that they were able to go there and win. They'll have to win on the road at Cincinnati. And unlike the Saints, who were on cloud 9 going into that Eagles game, the Bengals would be just as desperate. No matter what they do against the Browns this week, the Bengals will be just as desperate as Philadelphia will be in week 8. Just as desperate, if not more desperate. So we'll see what happens. Harambe 2024, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, to be fair, even Joe Witt said 4 plays cost the dub. Yeah, he did. And I hear him. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that assessment, but I hear him. I understand what he's saying. You know, I hear what he's saying, but more than 4 plays cost us that game. But he was talking about on the defensive side. He felt like 4 plays because all of them were on third downs, probably. Most of them were on third downs. We had chances to get off the field. Harambe 2024, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Harambe writes, Lou, nah, fam. We going 15-2. See, that's why you be losing your shit, because you got that mentality. You're not living in reality. You're not rooted in reality. So that's how you end up going crazy when shit doesn't go well. That losing hurts. No more, bro. 25 years of that, then you're going to give me a taste of greatness. I don't want no more L's. They are part of the game. You think the Chiefs going undefeated this year? Hell no. They're not going undefeated. It's a part of the game. Losing is a part of the game. It's how you bounce back from losing. It's how you bounce back from adversity that is the true test of a man, of a team. That's what greatness is surrounded and shrouded in, is overcoming adversity. That's how you really find out who you are. It's easy when shit's going well. It's easy. What happens when shit's not going great? Or you don't win? Then what? We're going to find out on Sunday against Carolina, right? How this team responds to their first loss in a month. We'll see. Harambe 2024. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, good night, bro. LOL. Good night, man. Good night. God bless and good night. Well, let's see. We can take a couple comments here. Take a couple comments. John Wynn says, have the Saints always been playing this terrible this season after the 2-5 record? No, obviously they started quick, but they've been rough. It's been rough for them. They could have won 2 of the 5 games that they lost, and this is the NFL for you. They talk about it's a game of inches, and the Saints are I think proof of that. They lost to the Falcons on a 58-yard field goal, walk-off 58-yarder. They lost to the Eagles on a 3rd and 16. They allowed a 58-yard catch and run that set up the game-winning touchdown. So you get a stop there on 3rd and 16 like they were supposed to. You beat the Eagles. You go to 3-0. The next week against Atlanta, you don't throw an interception for a touchdown. You don't muff a punt inside your own 5-yard line for a touchdown. You win that game, and all of a sudden you're 4-0 instead of 2-2. And then we know what has happened the last 3 weeks. They just haven't gotten it done, and it's a very small margin of error in this league. When you're a middle class team, as the Saints were going into the season, you don't have a massive margin of error. The have-nots definitely have no margin of error. The middle class doesn't have a big margin of error, and the haves have a humongous margin of error. Look at the Bengals, for instance. If the Bengals were any other team or had any other quarterback, that wasn't one of them ones, we would have counted them out at 0-3. They were dead at 0-3. The only reason that we haven't put dirt on them on the Cincinnati Bengals 2024 season, the only reason that we haven't covered them completely in dirt and put a tombstone that says, here lies the 2024 Cincinnati Bengals. The only reason is they got one of them ones. They're one of the halves. So you've got a much, much wider margin of error. We're going to cut you some slack. You can overcome 0-3, 1-4. You can overcome it. And I think they can, and they ultimately will. Had they had Derek Carr at 0-3, done. Had they had Daniel Jones at 0-3, done. Had they had Jalen Hurts at 0-3, done. Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins done. But they got one of them ones. So that margin of error, much bigger because they're one of the halves. So, yeah, it's a tough situation if you are the New Orleans Saints. Niners fan says, according to Colin Cowherd, Bo Nix is better than Brock Purdy. The disrespect is crazy. I mean, Colin Cowherd he's an interesting cat. He's good at what he does. I'll say that. He's really good at what he does. And he's one of those dudes that believes in what he believes. And even when he's wrong, he sticks to it. And he's gonna die on that hill. Sarek says, do you believe the Commanders are going to continue to do what they've been doing? Yes, I do. If you're talking about winning, yeah, I do. Sarek says, do you believe the Broncos have a chance to compete for a playoff spot? Yes, they do because of their defense. Absolutely, they do. I don't think they're going to make it. I don't think they're going to make it because I think they're the third best team in their division. And because the AFC North isn't as good as I thought it was going to be, but I still don't count out Cincinnati. Pittsburgh isn't going to go away, and Baltimore is the class of that division. You can't get three teams in the AFC West, and I think the Chargers are going to vie for a playoff spot, and we know the Chiefs are going to the playoffs. So you can't be the third best team in that division and expect to make the playoffs, but that's where they are. And so you got to hope that the AFC South continues to be trash and only one team who wins the division, which is going to be Houston, comes out of there. And right now, Indy's hanging around at 500, so you can't count them out. But Titans and the Jags stink. So you're really vying for a playoff spot. You got to hope that the Jets, that's the key. Because if the Jets remain trash, then you got a shot because the rest of that division is trash. So you got to have the other two divisions be one bid divisions, and then you can get two out of each of the other two divisions, and you get a third out of one because you get 7 teams in the playoffs. So you got to hope that the AFC East and the AFC South continue to be horrible, and only one team that wins the division gets out of there. And then you get 2 out of the AFC North, probably Pittsburgh and Baltimore at this point, but it could be Baltimore and Cincinnati. But you just got to have 2 out of there, and then you can get 3 out of the West. They're going to compete. They're going to be in that mix. Is Denver. I don't think they're going to have enough offensively when it's all said and done. Kevin in PRF says, is there a sadder story right now than Chase Young? Looks imposing as Reggie White and moves like a snail. Watching him pull up every time a play gets 2 yards away from him is depressing. That's him. His motor is non-existent. You know, when the play first starts, he comes off the ball like a bat out of hell, doing all of this moving but not going anywhere. And then once that play, like you said, gets a yard or 2 away from him, he's like, they can have it. I'll get them next time. Oh, man. Anyway, I digress. All right, let's get out of here. I want to give a quick shout out to BetUS. Go head on over to betus.com and use the promo code YouTube150 to get you 150% off, up to 150% off of your first deposit of up to $2,000 and 125% off of your next 2 deposits when you use the promo code YouTube150. So that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. This was a no contest. This was a good old fashioned, passionate ass whooping and getting your shoes, coat, and your hat taken. And the Saints were at home. They were honoring Drew Brees, and they were returning one of their the best coach in franchise history back in Sean Payton. And boy, did they absolutely wet the bed or what? 33-10 final score. Broncos were riding a 3-game win streak before their loss last week to the Chargers. get back to their winning ways, get back over 500. And the Saints have now dropped 5 in a row after winning 2 straight to start the season off. What a difference a month and a half makes. Wow. I mean, who would have thought after the first 2 weeks of the season, Saints 2-0, Broncos 0-2, Broncos can't score, can't win. The Saints can't do any wrong on offense. Defense is playing good ball at that time too. Who would have thought 5 weeks later, the Saints wouldn't have another win and the Broncos would be over 500? Wowzers. Anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. God bless. And I'll leave you with this. Think there's been a murder.